How is the paper? How did you find the paper? Huh? Okay. So you can write. I don't think this is a problem here. Maybe they have to increase the volume here. Volume వస్తుంది ఇది తక్కువ Am I audible? Yes. Judicial activism not activism is. The question points out it is not a constitutional backing. What is constitution backing? Where you have provisions in the constitution. So this is judicial activism is outside the provisions of the constitution, where judiciary invented provisions with assuming the in this there are two aspects. In this regard, there are two aspects with respect to the judiciary. One is judiciary originally was intended to safeguard rights. Originally was intended. So when judiciary is restricted in terms of its power, it appears very conservative because it to protect. But judiciary assumed a radical form. A radical form means it is not the same judiciary what remained at the beginning of the constitution. Judiciary gradually started expanding its role. In the process, it also brought major changes. Major changes judiciary introduced are all part of activism. Identification or invention of basic structure, self-appointment. Self-appointment is also part of judicial activism, where judiciary appoints its own members. This is activism because you are trying to undermine the power of executive. Apart from self-activism and apart from basic structure, once the right to property is repealed from the fundamental rights, judiciary's role also got equally transformed. Now, an institution to protect property. Once property is deleted, Supreme Judiciary assumed the role to protect social justice. The role to protect social justice. This is where we find not original intention of judiciary. So, our promotion of social justice is primary executive. It is through the institution of especially in late 1970s and early 80s. Late 1970s and early 80s, and this is where judiciary also brought in the concept of public interest litigation, a tool or instrument which is used frequently in American judiciary. So it has brought this public interest is represented within India. Clear? So when you talk about activism, judiciary assumes human rights. Through collegium. This is also part of judicial activism. So all three remain the activist role of judiciary. Not only judiciary assume the role of reforming social justice or advancing social justice, which was executive. Through executive, all human needs which are recognized under directive principles of state policy are transformed into human rights under Article 21, under right to life and liberty. So this is the role, another role of this that it is social justice. It is advancing social justice. So there is no resistance. Through it, role of there is They have to maintain self-restraint if they have to. They have to maintain self-restraint if they have to protect the spirit of separation of powers, because activism will always lead to encroachment into the other organs, functions and duties. Clear? So this is not envisaged in clear explicit terms under the Constitution, but when judiciary has assumed the role onto itself, it does not go against the spirit of Constitution. It does not go against the spirit of Constitution, because judicial activism has only strengthened the spirit of democracy. Judicial activism has only strengthened the spirit of democracy. It does not go against the provisions of the Constitution. Clear? So though the Constitution did not envisage this role, particular role to judiciary, judiciary invented itself. Judiciary invented itself and it got transformed. In the process of this transformation, it moved from a conservative judiciary to progressive judiciary. Once judiciary became progressive, you find the activist role in judiciary. Right? So that is the reason why judicial activism is identified with the second half, the later part, and that is particularly identified with the abolition of right to property. Right to property remained the most contentious issue, where judiciary jealously guarded it. Judiciary jealously tried to guard right to private property. Once that is removed from the fundamental rights, judiciary became free, because not all other fundamental rights remain contentious apart from right to property. Apart from right to property. So you will find the activist role in judiciary. The activist role in judiciary under public interest litigation or social action legislation, right, where it tried to advance all human needs into human rights. All human needs into human rights, a major activist role as far as judiciary is concerned. Clear? In the process, it also tried to limit the power of the parliament by inventing basic structure, and also limited the power of executive by introducing self-appointment. Both are part of judicial activism. Both are part of judicial activism. And the third provision that judiciary adopted for itself is it reintroduced due process, which was consciously avoided by the constitution makers by promoting established procedure by law with respect to Article 21. So three major changes within Indian Constitution which radically transformed the role of judiciary from a passive judiciary to activist judiciary. From a passive judiciary which remained confined as a body to interpret the Constitution and safeguard the fundamental rights, it transformed itself into an activist role. And this is quite visible since 1980s. Clear? And in the process, judiciary has become very close to the people. Judicial activism has taken judiciary very close to the people, because people have developed faith and confidence in the institution of judiciary rather than in the other two institutions. Clear? So for every grievance, public grievance, we move to court. We move to court under public interest litigation. So it is a product devised solely by the judiciary. Second part of the question, and the key also more or less suggested it, but I try to give you a link from where it originated. Explain the powers and functions of the National Green Tribunal. Also assess its performance. National Green Tribunal, why did it emerge? What are tribunals? First thing, when you ask about tribunals, you have to emphasize on what are tribunals. So tribunals are quasi-judicial. They also include non-judicial members. Non-judicial members. Though tribunals are constituted by Indira Gandhi to undermine the power of High Court, in reality, they have become constituent parts of administration. If you really wanted to expedite justice, you need tribunals, because courts cannot deal with all cases. Because of the increasing sophistication of administration, you cannot address all problems through administration and traditional judiciary. there is a need to transform and tribunals have emerged. Now you have tribunals with respect to every executive body. Income tax tribunal, where it will address the commissioner acquiring the power to adjudicate the matters. Similarly, Green Tribunal emerged in 2010. And what was the basis for this? Globalization. Green Tribunal is a result of globalization. Because globalization helped in recognizing global commons. And environment is one of the central issues of global commons. Global common means where it matters to everyone, where it matters to each and every country, right? So there has been a concerted effort to protect environment globally, and India is also an agreed party to this. So in terms of environment, because environment assumed this significance under globalization as part of global commons, so India also agreed to emphasize on this protection of environment. Under this, we introduced initially with respect to this pollution controls, but that remained partly ineffective. So there was a necessity to constitute a tribunal with civil court powers, and the decisions of the civil tribunal remain binding. It is similar to Article 262, where water dispute tribunals, where the decisions are binding. Similarly, even National Green Tribunal judgments are binding. They are binding, but they remain civil. It acquires civil court powers. So it has transferred particular identified powers, and those powers are already given in the key with respect to the powers of tribunal which it can deal with. So water, prevention and control of water, prevention and control of forest conservation, air pollution, environmental protection, public liability, and biological diversity. All these are identified powers of the tribunal. And as part of this tribunal, it has also, if you remember, Art of Living, it created one program on the banks of Yamuna, where even Indian Army helped them. Indian Army, they used the services of Indian Army in creating a vast area to accommodate some sort of a, what exactly went on I fail to recollect, but a 3-day program where even Indian Army's services were actually used. Thereafter, this matter was referred to Green Tribunal, and Green Tribunal penalized Art of Living, Pandit Ravi Shankar, for violating the environmental norms, right? So this is also a part of activist role played by the tribunals, because suo motu they have taken the case. Suo motu, excuse me, suo motu they have taken the case and administered justice. So this is a direct question. Wherever you find these powers, if you identified powers and civil court powers, and insist on the binding nature of the judgments, and 1 or 2 examples if you can give, recent examples, your answer is made. With respect to third question, do you agree that bifurcating geographical administrative areas of the state government into many districts and taluks would bring in effective governance in the country? When did district emerge as a unit of administration? Mughals. British only extended Mughal administration. Mughals administration. Mughal administration never focused on rural. Panchayats remained the backbone of administration in India since historical times. It is Mughals never focused on panchayat structure. Village acquired that autonomy. Only they introduced urban-centric administration. This is where district administration became central. And East India Company or the British colonial rule also extended the same. It did not emphasize on this. So the district administration became popular under, modern form of district administration became popular under Mughals, under East India Company. But this controversy in particular, because Telangana government it created 33 districts, 34 districts. Even the number is missing now, because when they will create new district, we don't know. But the state acquired this power. But this is meant for administrative convenience. When you create smaller districts, that is, facilitates better administration. This is the objective. But it can also lead to concentration of power. Both are there. Because once you create district administration, it can also possibly lead to creation of parastatal agencies. Parastatal agencies, which may undermine whatever grassroots democracy that we are trying to promote. Clear? So both feasibility, both possibilities are there. In terms of district administration, expansion of district administration may also lead to the rise in parastatal agencies. Parastatal means government agencies, right, which may undermine the powers and the functions of the democratically elected village panchayats or the municipalities. This is a threat. So there has to be a balance. Second thing is, even when you create districts, there has to be a viability option, sustainability option. It is not just create districts, because globalization aims at minimum government, maximum governance. Minimum government and maximum governance, and this goes against the spirit of globalization. But it promotes decentralization. It takes the administration closer to the people. It takes administration closer to the people. So you have both opinions expressed in terms of decentralization and in terms of prevention of governance. It becomes a restriction in terms of governance, because minimum government, maximum governance spirit is affected if you create more districts. If you create more districts. And it also gives rise to these parastatal agencies. Parastatal agencies which will become an impediment to the rise or to the functioning of the democratically elected institutions. Democratically elected institutions, because the threat of over emphasis on districts will also lead to concentration of power. If you create more and more districts, smaller districts, now the situation is, if the collector goes on a visit, within 4 hours he can go through the district and come back. This is the scenario that it has created, which was not in the past, right? If he goes out for a tour, in 4 hours he can go around the district and come back, right? This is not supporting to the cause of minimum government and maximum governance. It is leading to more and more dilution of powers of the collector also. More and more dilution of bureaucratic powers, but and at the same time increasing the bureaucratic reach. The bureaucratic reach. What is needed is upholding democratic reach. Upholding democratic spread, not bureaucratic reach. Clear? Because bureaucracy and democracy always remain antithetical. The more of bureaucracy, the less of democracy. The more of democracy, the less of bureaucracy. And district administration, when you create more districts, it only facilitates the bureaucratic administration rather than democratic administration. In highlighting this, the key also begins with the same. Two schools of thought which I have divided in terms of the understanding, and this is a little open question where you can also explore and create your own answers. As I said, democracy versus bureaucracy. You need not get restricted, because district administration, there are people who support it and people who are opposed to it. Some are opposed to creation of the 34 districts, some also favor this. You can also include transparency, accountability, responsibility, responsiveness by creating more districts. And at the same time, you can also argue that it will lead to wasteful expenditure. Wasteful expenditure by creating unnecessary bureaucratic structures and unnecessary bureaucratic hurdles where it could have been easily avoided. Right? Option is left to you. Charitable organizations have a significant role in socio-economic development of the country. However, there is a need for a new regulation for these organizations. Examine the challenges faced by them. This is a direct question. What are charitable organizations? When did they become so significant? It is not that charitable organization something which is new to India. It was in practice even under the colonial past. Princely states were also engaged in this, and that is how Ambedkar acquired his education. Ambedkar was sponsored. Ambedkar was sponsored to complete his education in Great Britain. So that is also part of charity, where the princely states got engaged, where they sponsored the candidates, right? But they were in the nature of informal institutions. But in the modern context, charitable institutions have acquired some formalness. When you talk about charitable institutions, first and foremost that strikes to your mind is the Microsoft, Mirinda, what is that? Gates Foundation, charitable trust. So once it has spread, now you know the reach of that, where they have pumped in 400 crores only to prevent AIDS in Africa. A staggering amount when you look at it. So charitable organizations are also equally pumping more and more money in terms of social welfare and social justice, especially in terms of addressing the inadequacies, the critical inadequacies, you can say, the critical inadequacies with respect to public health and public education, where the state fails to meet the critical inadequacies with respect to public health and public education. They are addressed by charitable organizations. So charitable organization in the modern context is part of the network administration, because globalization has introduced not state-centric administration. It has brought a shift in terms of new public management or new public administration, where state is one among the stakeholders. There are other non-state actors who are directly engaged in terms of development, in terms of socio-economic development, and charitable institutions or charitable organizations are also part of this. So they form into a network. They form into a network of administration, where they also support the efforts of the state. They don't contradict the efforts of the state. They complement or supplement the efforts of the state. They complement and supplement the efforts of the state. They are not contradicting the efforts of the state, because state failed to adequately address health and education. This is the areas where you find all charitable organizations. Either they are in terms of promoting health, majorly a basic concern, or in terms of education. Clear? So charitable organizations now, because they are pumping in funds, there is a felt necessity to also regulate them. And this is what, in fact, if I am not mistaken, Malegaon Commission was formed to regulate charitable institutions in 2007. Malegaon Commission was formed to regulate the charitable institutions or voluntary organizations, because charitable institutions are also part of voluntary organizations. To regulate voluntary organizations, Malegaon Committee was constituted in 2007. Based on that recommendation, they introduced Voluntary Organizations Regulation Act 2007. Clear? So it is basically aiming at two aspects of it. One is the funds flow. Once you bring public funds or expenditure into public, it cannot go unregulated. There is a necessity to regulate every expenditure that comes into the society. It cannot remain unregulated, because If it is not regulated, then it has also other possibilities like money laundering. Other possibilities like money laundering. Because when you look at charitable organizations, it is not that every charitable organization is engaged in socio-economic development. If you look at some of these religious mutts in Karnataka, I am not trying to identify any one particular, but there is a possibility for money laundering. Why not? Why not? So what? Is it not a charitable organization? But substantiate it. Don't be afraid. Otherwise, what was the necessity for Tendulkar to go and visit Puttaparthi? There could be, I am telling, because here they have mentioned money laundering. Then how does money get laundered? What is money laundering? Send money and receive back. Legalize money. All illegal money is sent abroad and bring back as legalized money. And not only this, because when you leave this expenditure unregulated, it promotes parallel economies. And most of the thing, when you look at this in India, most of the movies are made, though they know they don't run. Why? Because converting black into white. Spend money and convert it into white. They know it is a futility. If there are Balaya fans, let me not hurt their feelings, but I am telling you. None of these movies in the past 1 year or 2 years did run, but he keeps on making movie every 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. That means it leads to the suspicion that you are trying to convert black money into white money. It's also part of this money laundering business, right? Where charitable organizations are also involved. So don't refer that a particular name, but you can mention there is a possibility. There is a possibility through charitable organization for money being laundered. Otherwise, how can you find every district having one charitable organization operating a school, operating engineering college, operating medical college in every district of Karnataka? How is it possible? How much wealth can it generate in terms of charities? Clear? That is where you find the mushrooming of this. So there is a necessity. Once there is excess circulation of money in terms of pumping into the economy, you need definite regulation. So we have both charitable organizations engaged in critical public inadequacies, addressing critical public inadequacies, and also charitable organizations, though they may not formally appear, because no organization can claim I am participating in money laundering. But the key also talks about money laundering. Right? So lack of governmental support. So charitable organizations, instead of lack of governmental support, you can say critical public inadequacies that are being addressed. My suggestion is more appropriate than lack of governmental support. That means more, that appears more negative. And that accreditation is necessary. Accreditation comes through regulation. Accreditation comes through regulation. Clear? So in spite of increase in growth rate of food production almost reaching to double in the last 50 years, still India has ranked very low in the global hunger index. Is this index misleading? Is the index also similar to our statistics, manipulated statistical data? If it is genuine, then what are the causes for this global hunger? Because hunger is a vicious cycle. When you talk about hunger, it is part of a vicious cycle. Hunger is a result of poverty. Hunger is the result of poverty. And poverty is the result of lack of work. So it's a cyclical process, a vicious cycle which moves. So hunger, the threat of hunger is, it leads to death. It leads to death. Your survival is dependent on this. Without satisfaction, you are satisfying your hunger, your survival cannot be met. But the global hunger index does not only just focus on hunger. It is not sufficient that you eat. Whether you eat nutritious food or not, that is more important. It is not that you eat some food. Whether you eat nutritious food, that is what is important as far as global hunger is concerned. And there are many surveys which are conducted, even private surveys. Hyderabad, one of the Hyderabad NGOs also conducted this hunger and malnutrition, Hungama survey. Hungama survey, HUNGAMA, malnutrition. Right? So I think that report was published very old, 2013 or 2014. But they came out with staggering facts, which were not reported in the National Sample Survey. National Sample Survey did not, in fact, highlight those shortcomings. They said this National Sample Survey deviates from this private survey, an NGO conducted survey, hungry and malnutrition. So global hunger is recognized as part of Asian effort. As part of Asian effort, where your economic growth has also moved into accommodate Human Development Index. That has been the source. That has been the source for all other indices, where you also have global hunger index. And it is not something which is only conducted in countries like India. It has worldwide reach. Worldwide reach. And they have got their own standards of measuring hunger and poverty. So the report cannot be misleading. The report cannot be misleading because they maintain global standards in measuring hunger and poverty. Clear? Wherever there is poverty, poverty and hunger are twins. Wherever you have poverty, you have hunger. So hunger, the definition of hunger has changed. The definition of hunger has changed. The definition of hunger includes malnutrition. It is not just that you suffer from lack of food. It is not just that you suffer from lack of food. The definition of hunger included malnutrition. Right? Since Millennium Development Goals, there has been a concerted effort to improve the nutrition. Because India has all the defects of malnutrition. We have stunting, we have wasting, we have malnutrition. Clear? So we cannot find fault with the global institutions. But what is stunting and wasting? Stunting means where the child does not get the height that is required to his weight, to his age. And wasting, weight according to his age. WW, weight, stunting, short, where he does not grow. Where he does not grow to his age is stunting. Wasting means where he does not increase the weight. Because according to the global standard, a newborn child should have at least 2.5 kg, not less than 2.5 kgs. And thereafter he has to proportionately grow. Proportionately grow. This is where the nutrition indices aim at. So global hunger index includes the definition of malnutrition, where it incorporated malnutrition as one of the basic aspects in terms of global hunger. So we cannot say that the report is misleading. They maintain global standards and they have global reach. Right? So we fail to recognize that nutrition is also a critical aspect in terms of human development. Got it? Yeah.
But in the team, they are saying that it's misleading because most of the weightage is for children. Like, how is that a reason to say that it's misleading? You also have children in their houses.
I didn't get your question.
In the team, they are saying that it's misleading, not because it's unfair to India, but because most of the weightage is for children. And our problems are with children only. But is it a valid?
See, it is the problem with not only with children, because even the schemes that the government of India introduced prior to this hot cooked meals, what they are practicing now in terms of improving the nutritious levels of the children, we are only providing them with a take-home ration, which used to get diluted at the family level. So we never address the problem in terms of your policies. Even now, Maneka Gandhi, actually, when she was last time when she was the child and women end, she suggested bringing back the take-home ration, replacing this hot-cooked meal. Now hot-cooked meal is served. A proper nutritious diet is served to the children and lactating women and pregnant women in India. Right? So that a nutritious diet directly goes into them. Instead of providing them with a take-home ration. There every possibility, if you give them eggs, will they eat, will they feed the children? If you are hunger and starving, you yourself eat. So dilution at the family level, this is what is problem. So the option is, I leave it to you. You can write both.
So we can suggest that yes, it's correct, and then stating the fact that the public distribution system is not proper.
That is why they wanted to remove public distribution and introduced direct benefit transfer scheme.
Plus,
Money will be transferred. Money will be transferred to your account, remove public distribution. They say it is unviable. They will close down all your food corporation of India. You don't need to store food.
plus warehouse
But that will increase malnutrition again in India. Direct benefit transfer scheme is not a viable option for Indian society. If you want to introduce direct benefit transfer scheme, you have to introduce prohibition in India. It has to go with prohibition. Otherwise, as soon as the money comes into your account, next door only you will open one wine shop. The whole 1 month's ration he will consume in one day. And what will he carry home? At least public distribution, you are giving 1 rupee kg rice, at least that is sufficient for the family to survive for 1 week, 1 month. If you want to really introduce direct benefit transfer scheme, you have to also radically change. And that they will not do because that is a major revenue grosser. Major source of revenue. So they cannot do that. Then how will it remain effective? At least here you are surviving. That is the reason why AP and Telangana, it has shown a positive shift. Malnutrition. Because 175, 180 they are giving some packet which can take care of the family needs for 1 month. A basic nutritious diet is extended. In the absence of this, if you give money, what they will do? Will they go and buy from a supermarket or from a grocery? First thing is, he will be attracted as soon as he sees money, and as soon as he comes out of the bank, you will see, he will walk in. And the whole money is blown off. Then what is that he will support? It will, I tell you, within 1 year you will find adverse reports, adverse rankings as far as malnutrition is concerned in India. Our society is different. We are not like Western societies, where you also make sense. చేయొచ్చు పీడిఎస్ సిస్టంలో ఆధార్ అప్లింగ్ చేసినప్పుడు వాట్ ది ఐడియా ఇస్ టు రిమూవ్ డిప్లిసిటీ. అవేర్నెస్ లేక ఎక్కడ ఉండదు. ఎందుకంటే గవర్నమెంట్ ఎక్కడి నుంచి అయినా ఇన్సెంటివ్ వస్తుందంటే దాని ఇమీడియట్గా అందరికీ అవేర్నెస్ అయితే ఉంటుంది. కానీ కొంత ఎజిటేషన్ ఉండొచ్చు. ఆధార్ అనేది కొంతమందికి రాకపోవచ్చు ప్రాపర్ అడ్రస్ లేకపోతే, కానీ అవేర్నెస్ లేక కాక. సో ప్రాపర్ డాక్యుమెంటేషన్ లేక ఆధార్ అనేది ఎక్స్క్లూడ్ ఉండొచ్చు, కానీ నాట్ బికాస్ ఆఫ్ అవేర్నెస్, ల్యాక్ ఆఫ్ అవేర్నెస్. యూ కెన్ యాడ్, ఏది ఇచ్చినా సబ్స్టాన్షియేట్ చేసేటట్టు ఉండాలి. దానికి రీజన్ పాయింట్అవుట్ చేయాలి. గ్లోబల్ హంగర్ ఇండెక్స్ మనం తప్పట్టలేము, ఎందుకంటే ప్రపంచం మొత్తం ఉంది అది. ఇండియా ఒక్కదే దానికి చేస్తుందంటే మనం మిస్లీడింగ్ అనవచ్చు. మన స్టాటిస్టిక్స్ లా కాదు, మ్యానిపులేట్ చేస్తున్నాం, బయటికి చెప్తలేం. Parliamentary privileges are intended to facilitate the parliamentarians in doing their work to advance the interest of the people. They are not meant to be privileges against the people or against the freedom of the press. In light of this, discuss the need for codification of parliamentary privileges. Article 105, Article 194. directly pointing out to these two articles. What are privileges? What are parliamentary privileges?
If any execution of duty, like if legislator is performing any
Say privileges, the constitution recognizes privileges of the house and privileges of the members. Right? People who are punished are under the privileges of the house, not privileges of the individual. So constitution guaranteed both under 105 and 194 privileges of house, privileges of members. If you violate the privileges of the house, then the house acquires the contempt power to call anyone who is writing derogatorily against the house. So it can punish. So there are reported incidents where the legislatures have punished the editors of the newspapers, because usually you find reports against the legislature in terms of freedom of violating of freedom of press. So when press writes something against the house, then the house acquires the power, privilege of the house. But privilege of the members, can you codify the privilege of the members? You can codify the physical behavior of the members, but you cannot codify the ideas of the members. Physical behaviors of the members you can codify. You can say you have to maintain decorum in the house, right? So you can say that like gestures, what Roja was explained. So if you maintain dignity in the house, then your privileges are granted. But in the name of privileges, you cannot codify. You behave like this, you sit like this, you don't raise your question. Then what is the point in having elected representative status if you are denied to represent the interests of your people? So codifications means where you establish rules of behavior, and you say you cannot raise this question, then what is the point in getting elected? If I don't have the opportunity or the freedom to express the interests of my people, right? It comes with that power. That is what I said. Physical behavior can be regulated. Physical behavior can be regulated, not your thinking. So you cannot have codifications with respect to your ideas or thinking. You have acquired complete freedom, complete privilege in terms of your expression. Yesterday I was scrolling through the news, then I found Akbaruddin is charge sheeted for a remark that he passed some 3-4 years back, I think. In one of the northern Telangana states, let the state give us 15 minutes time, he said, a case is filed. Right? So you are expected to maintain some sort of a decorum in the house. House is there to discuss. House is there to discuss the problems of the people. And you have got every power, every freedom to freely express your views. Right? Right? This is a privilege of the members. And how can you codify this privilege? Is it possible to codify the privilege of a member, stating that you should not raise some questions? You should not raise scrapping of Article 370 in Parliament. Can you say that? It is a freedom of the members to raise. Otherwise, how can they question the government? How can you extract answer from the government without raising the question? So it's a privilege of the members. And this privilege also guarantees that no member shall be arrested arbitrarily. No member shall be arrested arbitrarily, especially when the session is in progress. Because without the consent of the speaker, you cannot take someone into custody. This is what has happened. Farooq Abdullah, speaker said, I am not aware. I am not aware that Farooq Abdullah is arrested. Because there is no communication to the office of speaker. When the members demanded that he should be presented in the house, violation of the privilege of the member, violation of the privileges of the members. So privileges are also very vast. Very vast. Your physical behavior can be regulated in terms of codification. But not your mental freedom. Not your mental freedom. Not your thinking. where you are free to raise any issue. Where you are free to raise any issue which dominates the public interest. Which dominates the public interest. Clear? And the press is also free. The press is also free to publish. Now you cannot even blame the press when there are live proceedings. See, according to the privileges of the House, nothing shall be published which the Speaker does not consent. So whatever proceedings in the House, if the Speaker says expunge the remarks, remove them from the record, you are not permitted to publish it. You have to only publish that information which the Speaker has authenticated. Which the Speaker has authenticated, not any other information. Not any other information. But when the live proceedings, when everyone is witness to this, what is happening inside the House, then how can you prevent, how can you prohibit the press from reporting certain things? We cannot strictly go. And that is the way the Supreme Court intervened and said, privilege of the House cannot undermine the fundamental rights guaranteed under Article 19(1), freedom of press. Freedom of press. If there are material grounds, then the press is also free to report it. It does not obstruct the privilege of the House. It does not obstruct the privilege of the House. So only when it infringes the rights of the House, then the press can be punished. So it is like creating some sort of a atmosphere of terror by calling certain editors and punishing them, so that you don't report against the House. Clear? So House has privileges, undoubtedly. Even members have privileges, undoubtedly, but they come with limitations. But you cannot, limitations are there, but you cannot have codification. You cannot codify the behavior of the members. You cannot codify the behavior of the members. You can only physically regulate the behavior, physical regulation, but not mental regulation. And that is the reason why Speaker tries to, instead of codifying, what Speaker tries to do is expunge the remarks if he thinks they are unparliamentary. They are unparliamentary or against the decorum of the House, dignity of the House. Right? Codification is an impossibility. You cannot run the House by codifying. You cannot run the House by codifying. And this is also an open question where you can think and write in terms of your privileges. Highlight the important features of Motor Vehicle Amendment Bill 2019. What are the various challenges associated with the bill? The first challenge with the bill is it is being opposed by the states, encroaching onto the power of the state through the concurrent list. Motor Vehicle Act is being challenged for encroaching onto the powers of the state through the contrary to the concurrent list. A law legislated under the concurrent list. A law legislated under the concurrent list which encroaches onto the powers of the state. And there is a resistance, but the government went on in the name of public security, road safety, and in the process it has enhanced the fees like anything, like that Mahesh Babu's film, where he proposes high penalties for traffic violations. It was similar to that, 25,000. If I violate a traffic rule, I have to sell my bike. That is the level of penalties that were proposed to implement it. See, there is one missing, what they ignored is, there is a proportionality principle in terms of justice. You cannot undermine the proportionality principle. Every offense, every crime comes with a proportionality. You cannot arbitrarily impose fines. For any violation, it has to be a proportionality principle that cannot be violated. Because public demanded, you cannot impose death sentence on each and everyone. It has to go with the proportionality because justice works through proportionality. According to the crime, sentence awarded, not based on public interest. Not based on public interest. This is what legal system demands. So you cannot undermine the principle of proportionality. Clear? So this is where the road safety norms are the one good thing is they have decriminalized, because with respect to accident victims, the most important is that the golden hour, immediate accident, 1 hour, where they need hospital care. Most of us, we see them, but we don't go there. Even if you are good Samaritan, because you think if something goes wrong, that you are also involved. You have to explain. You have to explain, and if a case is filed, you have to also go to court. So this provides an exemption. As a good Samaritan, you can attend to him. No civil and criminal charges against you. Because what is needed is the first hour of treatment, that is more important, critical for saving the life of an individual. So even when you are sympathetic or empathetic towards accident victims, most of them don't come forward because of administrative hassles. Because of the administrative hassles. And this act provided a big relief. This act provided, though there have been advertisements in televisions through the government stating that it shall not infringe your rights even if you attend to an accident victim, but not many people came forward because of unnecessary harassment. They thought they are made responsible to address many issues, and this is one move which tried to help them. And it also proposed to create a fund for the sake of the accident victims, and it is also aimed at insurance, because this is another aspect. Modern governments, they operate through insurance, like even our what is that flagship insurance scheme, Ayushman Bharat. Insurance, government is not paying from its pocket. Government of India is not paying from its pocket. It is insurance. And what is needed in India is similar to right to education, right to health. Universal health care, not insurance. Not insurance. This is something critical which it did not address. The Motor Vehicles Act. Clear? And it has suggested various possibilities to prevent accidents, and also a way forward in terms of interventions which remain partly self-restraint and self-promotional. And the World Health Organization report for 2018 highlights that non-communicable diseases account for 63% of deaths in India. This is a question, I think, extended from Global Hunger Index because there are overlappings. Is this a scenario? Examine the need for alternate system of medicine and Ayush in particular. What are the key strategies that are identified by the Government of India towards the process of mainstreaming of Ayush? Why did Ayush came into picture?
No, we don't have much force now, doctor force.
We had to maintain 1:1000, and we had 1:30,000. If you only go with allopathic doctors. So in Assam, they tried to introduce a 3-year medical graduation program. Instead of 5 plus 1, 6 years, they reduced it to half. And they are not doctors in particular. They are not complete doctors in particular like MBBS, but they introduce a bridge course sort of thing where They are taught about the basic anatomy of the body and basic first aid. Basic first aid, and send it and appoint them in rural areas to address the health issues of the people. But they assume themselves to be doctors. They assumed themselves to be doctors and they never wanted to work in rural areas. Right? And that was when that scheme failed, then Prime Minister Modi, once he came in, he tried to expand it under Ayush by bringing all the alternate medical that is available in India. Now once you bring them, the ratio has come down. By incorporating Ayush, it has come to 1:1470, I think, if I am not mistaken. So we are almost near to the mark of 1:1000 in terms of alternate medicine. Alternate medicine by bringing in Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, and what is that, SM? Siddha and homeopathy. And Ayush is one thing which cannot address the cure, because it always promotes holistic medicine. Holistic body. If you go to homeopathy, what medicine they give, that is not cure. Yoga, that is not cure only to particular thing. It's a holistic understanding of the body. Holistic understanding of the body. And even the most of the even Western countries are also trying to appreciate this. And yoga is recognized International Day, where it is being celebrated. Yoga not only provides flexibility to the body and keeps it fit, but also helps in health. Also helps in health. This is something which is recognized. Even when I had this spondylitis, I went to orthopedic. He said, I don't suggest any treatment for you, but do practice yoga. Orthopedic surgeon. You practice yoga, you will get relief. No surgery, no medicine. That means even allopathy is also projecting and promoting yoga as an alternate medicine. As an alternate medicine. When I go to the doctor, he himself is advocating this. Though he could have said, no, I will perform a surgery. No. That shows the rising level of consciousness, not only within the medical fraternity, but within the people, to the benefits of Ayush. To the benefits of Ayush. Clear? So it has emerged as an alternate medicine. Alternate medicine, because allopathy comes with a lot of side effects. Whereas when you try to address the holistic way of a body treatment, it has minimum side effects. Minimum side effect. It is like minimum governance and maximum governance. Minimum intrusion, but maximum benefits. Minimum intrusion and maximum benefits. Whereas your allopathy medicine, whatever it is, it comes always with a side effect. Clear? So there has been a concerted effort starting especially under this government. Especially under this government, because it believes in traditional medicine. And our Prime Minister also recognized traditionally we are very well advanced in terms of medicine, where we had plastic surgery. We have mastered the plastic surgery, had head transplant. Traditionally we have acquired this technology. That means you should believe in your traditional practices. Traditional practices, because historically we had this technology as part of the tradition. So we cannot ignore this Prime Minister's statement. Right? You might have read Ganesh, head transplant. So historically it is done. Historically done, that means we had the technology in the past. So there is nothing wrong in subscribing to the traditional alternate medicine. Right? There are benefits, advantages which are accrued through that. And what are the safeguards enshrined in our constitution for protecting the minorities? Is there any need for defining minorities state-wise?
On the take of minority,
First question is very simple because Constitution itself has safeguarded the rights of the minorities under Article 25 to Article 30 because it was necessity. It was a necessity that the Constitution recognized to protect diversity. To protect diversity. Secondly, we discarded the practice of separate electorate. When we discarded the practice of separate electorate, we alternately provided them cultural rights. When we denied them political rights, we guaranteed them cultural rights. So these two things what mattered under the Constitution Assembly to secure them with the cultural rights. To secure them with the cultural rights. So minorities are recognized. And accordingly, the Constitution also made provisions for safeguarding the minority rights. So minorities, as far as the Constitution is concerned, it recognizes both religious and linguistic. And Article 350 exclusively examines that. Article 350 exclusively examines this, 350A and 350B. As far as religious minorities are concerned, we have 25 to 28, where the freedom of religious practice is also established, and cultural and educational rights under 29 and 30. 25 and 28 does not lead to any major controversies other than personal religious practices. But 29-30 led to controversies because most of the other denominations, they also wanted this minority status. Minority status in terms of educational institutions. Ramakrishna Math was the first one. Which demanded a minority status, which said we are not part of Hinduism, so we should be recognized as minority. And in fact, Kolkata High Court recognized this. Thereafter, it is Supreme Court which overturned the High Court decision. Supreme Court overturned the High Court decision and said minority, Ramakrishna Math cannot be identified as a separate religion. It is part of Hinduism. It is part of Hinduism. Why all are moving towards this identity is because of this safeguards that cultural rights extend. The safeguards that the cultural rights extend to the minorities. This has prompted many of these denominations as separate, not apart from Hinduism, part of Hinduism, but where they wanted. Even the satsangis they wanted, even this Swaminarayan, they said we don't believe in Hindu religious practices. We should be identified as a separate sect, minority status. And Karnataka extended to the Lingayats, where they are recognized as separate minority. So minorities have these rights according to the Constitution. But the second part of the question is very interesting. First part of the question is straight and forward because there are multiple provisions in the Constitution. Multiple provisions in the Constitution with respect to the safeguarding the rights of the minorities. Is there any need for defining minority state-wise? Because what the Constitution has recognized is the universal nature of minorities, both linguistic and religious minorities. It did not specifically identify state-wise. Is there a necessity? Second question, this is an open question. What you will write? Second question is open-ended question. What you will write? Where they are not minorities, majority. Right? That means you don't want to extend these benefits to them. You don't want to extend the benefits to Jammu Kashmir. You don't want to extend benefits to Christian dominated northeastern states because they are not minorities there. They constitute majority in those states. They constitute majority in those states. So it's an open-ended question where you can write. So what is that you can write? Think. 1 or 2 points.
Parliament, Constitution does not recognize
state-wise.
Yes.
Now, can we? Do we have to identify state-wise?
Provided it must
See, abrogation of Article 370 is state-wise only. where you considered that this particular minority prevented development because of the safeguards under Article 35A and Article 370. You abrogate it. If you go with state-wise, then the constitution did not emphasize on state-wise, but the parliament went with. Then Amit Shah went to Northeast and reassured them that we are not going to bring any change here. So we are not state-wise. The constitution remains universal in recognition of minorities. It is not specific to a particular state. This is where I said first part of the question is very straight, where you can in detail present the provisions that are there part of the constitution. But second part of the question is open-ended. Do you support state-wise identification of minorities, or is it enough if you follow the same pattern of universal recognition of minorities on the national scale? Because Constitution or Supreme Court does not recognize identity of minorities based on local state-wise. It only recognized on the national level. The total constitution, the total population constituted on the national level is identified. Now can we be more state-specific in the identification of minorities? This is what the question is. What do you think? Can we be state-specific?
So, if you have to look at, like, assess the performance of various schemes to say if they are reaching minorities, when we need
Hardly there are any schemes.
not schemes for minorities, general schemes to assess them on the basis of whether they are reaching the vulnerable sections.
See, within the minorities, vulnerable constitutes another layer. Especially Muslim minorities, their situation is much worse than the highly marginalized in Hindu society. Dalit Muslim situation is pathetic in comparison to Dalit Hindus. At least Dalit Hindus have acquired political representation, and their situation is much worse because they are only getting employment. You find most of this 5 to 6 years age group working as a puncture shop mechanic. His life begins there because it is not that he has to work, because that is a compulsion. The family cannot survive without that 10 rupees or 15 rupees that he brings. So their situation is much worse. They remain excluded. They remain excluded from national political representation because especially these minorities, they don't have a single national leadership. That is the major vacuum that it is created. You have only pockets. MIM having deep roots in Hyderabad. You have only pockets in representation, but you don't have national level representation where their interests are properly projected and recognized. Clear? So they remain specific to each and every state. But the Constitution does not recognize this. It has recognized the population based on the total population of the state in terms of extending this minority recognition. So what would be its impact in terms of state-wise? You support the constitutional provision, or you want any special safeguards extended at the state level? You only want play safe, so go with the constitution. Or you can propose remedies. It is open question. You can propose remedies at the state level. Is there any desirability of bringing reforms? Because you cannot set a particular minority in a particular state as a standard throughout India.
Given the geographic condition of that area, sir, those areas need to be left aside from
You think if they are majority, you should leave them as minorities, right?
Given the geographical condition.
So you mean to say like Schedule 5, not Schedule 6. Schedule 5 of the Constitution, not Schedule 6. Where they are not uniformly spread across, distributed across India. Whereas Schedule 6 contains the concentrated presence of minorities. So whatever is choice is left to you for your imagination to think and write. The strength of civil society institutions needs to be built up as a balancing force between the state and market institution. In this context, what are the challenges for making civil society institutions more effective? How to overcome these challenges? Question is a little vague. What are civil society institutions? CSI?
NGOs, charities,
Everything falls under civil society institutions. Because civil society is a bridge between state and market. It is a bridge between state and market. And every institution that is present other than state and market is part of civil society. Part of civil society. It could be caste associations, it could be religious associations, it could be cooperate, anything which is not identified with the state or identified with the market is part of civil society institution and civil society representation. So the second part of the question, it deals with this. The strength of civil society institutions needs to be built up as a balancing force between the state and market, as a balancing force. In this context, what are the challenges for making civil society institutions more effective? When you say civil society, they operate through democracy. Democracy is essential for civil society's success. In the absence of democracy, there is no civil society. In the absence of democracy, there is no civil society. So if you want civil society to succeed, there has to be a democracy. Only then civil societies can bridge or operate as a balancing factor between state and market. State and market. That means they are representing all those factors which are not taken care of by state, are taken care of by the market. What does market stand for? So first we have to identify what does state stand for and what does market stand for. Only then we can identify civil society institutions. What does state stand for? All the institutions of governance is part of state. And what does market represent? What does market represent? What is that we bring as part of market and state? All governance aspects, institution building is part of state. And similarly, can we identify any institutions in respect to market? What are the institutions that are part of market which are recognized? What is, then only you will know what is left out is civil society. What is left out is part of civil society. So all cultural institutions are part of civil society. All cultural institutions are part of civil society. Does all economic institutions are part of market? This is what I wanted you to know. Are all political institutions part of state? Are all economic institutions part of market? Then what are they which are part of civil society? Because if they remain three exclusive domains, then they cannot create a balance. If all three remain exclusive, there is no balance. So there has to be interaction. And interaction has to come through civil society. Interaction has to come through civil society. For example, whatever are there part of this questionnaire itself, to address global hunger, what is that civil society institutions can do? To address hunger, what is the civil society institutions can do? That is part of civil society. Intervening into market. Intervening into market to address what market failed to address? Inequalities. What market failed to address? Inequalities. What market failed to address? Poverty. But same poverty and inequalities are also part of state. Poverty and inequalities are also part of state. And this is where the significance of civil society institutions.
The market definition.
Market definition. Market means all those production which takes place is part of market. All the production activity that takes place is part of market. All political decision making that takes place is part of state. All political decision making that takes place is part of state. All production, all wealth creation in society is part of market. Even agriculture. All wealth creation is part of market. All production. Production means agriculture is also part of production. So all production is part of market. All decision making is part of state. And between is civil society. And civil society institutions, they remain significant because they are the bridge between the two. On one side you have given freedom to market, the other side the state is also restricted in terms of welfare. Then it has the responsibility of the civil society to advance welfare. This is where we have to locate civil society. And as far as this key is concerned, it has tried to identify. But in a very abstract way. It never defined what civil society institutions are. Once you define civil society institutions, then you are specifically addressing that. You are specifically addressing the cultural aspect or the economic aspect or the political aspect of that. Clear? So the abstract answers in terms of, early warning mechanism which are able to detect and amplify perturbations on the ground among the people, the alert society, the state and the market to take corrective action. What is this early warning? Early warning, it has not mentioned. So the key is more abstract than with respect to other answers. So here you can build your answers based on welfare. Civil society institutions' contributions towards social justice. Civil society institutions' contributions towards social justice, which is neglected both by state and society, both by state and market. Because under the neoliberal state, welfare is not identified as the major aspect of the state. Welfare is recognized as part of the societal interaction or non-state actors, and civil society institutions constitute of non-state actors. Civil society institutions consist of non-state actors. It is not state, but society which is responding to the challenges that are thrown both by market and state. So as part of state intervention, wherever the constitution is violated, you find response from the civil societies in terms of civil liberties. Wherever the constitution is violated, you find response from civil societies in terms of civil liberties. They are also part of civil society institutions. And wherever market failed in restoring, in resolving the economic crisis of inequalities or hunger and malnutrition, then it is the responsibility of the civil society which has come forward. Because economic growth is not identified only with GDP growth, Human Development Index. And Human Development Index is nurtured, promoted and developed by civil society institutions. Nurtured, developed and promoted by civil society institutions, which remain the bridge between state and market. So one side it prevents violation of state in terms of human rights violation or civil liberties violation. So you find a response from civil society emerging as activism to force state to comply with the constitution. To force state to comply with the constitution. Compliance with the constitution is the major role civil society institutions play with respect to the state, because they demand state to implement and safeguard and enforce the provisions of the constitution. And market when it is completely free, a laissez-faire market, self-regulated market, it has very limited reach. So it cannot control the market. It cannot control the market, but it can influence the market. It cannot control the market, but it can influence the market. Because market cannot be controlled neither by the civil society nor by the state. It remains autonomous. It remains autonomous. But it determines the shape of things to come. Market determines the shape of things to come. And if the civil society is very strong, then you find resistance. You find resistance. This is where it is visible in terms of this Occupy Wall Street, where you are trying to influence the market decisions. Where you are trying to influence the market decisions. Clear? So this is where the activist role civil society institutions are expected to play. So it remains very vague. It remains very vague. So you can infer. You can infer which is not part of political decision making, or which is not of production. Which is not of production, which is not part of state, or which is not part of society, is economy, which is specific to society, is what civil society is. But it is more complex than as it is, because within civil society there are other societies also. But for your understanding, that is not necessary. There is a demarcation within civil society in terms of political society and civil society. That debate we don't need here. So we can restrict civil society for promoting the respect for individual rights. The role of civil society is promoting the respect for individual rights, and the role of civil society is also to improve the living standards of the people and prevent income inequalities and hunger and starvation. Hunger and starvation, which are the immediate necessities, because civil society institutions do not aim at large. They only focus on the minimum needs of the people. Realizable minimum needs of the people. Realizable minimum needs of the people. Any questions? You have any difference of opinion? You can express. You are free to do so. But try to remain objective, because as some raised, sir, can we write specifically? So I try to avoid specific names. Instead, there is nothing wrong in structuring your answers. Clear? Got it? I am not well, otherwise I would have focused more. Anyway, I think I tried to do justice.